Welcome back to the deep dive. Usually when we crack open the history books, we're kind of on a mission to find the definitive version of a person.
Right. That's the standard historian's instinct. You want the biography, not the hagiography.
Exactly. You want to strip away the myths, get to the facts. But today, we're tackling a figure where that might actually be impossible. We're talking about Ali ibn Abi Talib. And honestly, after going through the research, it feels less like a biography and more like we're just staring at a Rorschach test.
That is the perfect way to frame it. I mean, Ali is arguably the ultimate puzzle of early Islam. Everyone claims him, but they claim a totally different version of him.
Okay, so to the Sunnis, he's the fourth rightly guided caliph.
Yes, a pious, brave, but ultimately a fallible human companion of the Prophet.
But to the Shia, he's something else entirely.
To the Shia, he is the first Imam, the infallible successor, the gate of knowledge itself.
And then you've got the third group in our stack, the academic historians. And to them, he seems to be, well, a ghost, really. A figure just so covered in layers of later political paint that seeing the actual man underneath is incredibly difficult.
Precisely. So our mission today isn't to tell his life story, in that traditional sense. We're not getting bogged down in battles and birth dates.
Right.
We're investigating memory. We're going to look at how three distinct lenses, the Sunni, the Shia, and the critical academic lens, created three completely different Alis.
And to kick this off, I want to throw a number at you that honestly just baffled me when I was prepping. It's what I'm calling the data mystery.
I have a feeling I know which number you're about to bring up.
So let's just set the stage. Ali is raised in the Prophet Muhammad's household from childhood. He's the cousin, the son-in-law.
He's there for everything.
Everything. The first revelation, every major battle. And crucially, he lives for 30 years after the Prophet dies.
He is, you could argue, the closest male relative with the longest, most intimate contact with the Prophet.
Right. So you'd think he'd be the number one source for the Prophet's sayings, the guy you go to for the quotes. But when you look at the major Sunni collections, Ali is attributed with roughly 536 narrations.
536, it's a tiny number.
Now, compare that to Abu Huraira, a companion who only spent about 3 years with the Prophet. He has over 5,000 narrations attributed to him. 5,000.
It's a striking discrepancy, isn't it? You have the lifelong shadow of the Prophet with about 500 records and the latecomer with 5,000.
It just doesn't add up.
And that gap, it isn't just a statistical fluke, it's a crime scene clue. It tells us everything about how memory was constructed.
It feels like a missing library. So let's unpack it. If I'm a traditional Sunni scholar, how do I explain this? How do I justify the Prophet's closest family member being, well, basically silent compared to Abu Huraira?
Well, the traditional Sunni explanation is actually quite pragmatic. They argue it's not a conspiracy, it's a job description issue.
A job description.
Think about what Ali was doing for those 30 years. He was a statesman, a judge, a warrior, a governor, and then caliph during a massive civil war.
Okay, so he was busy running an empire.
He was busy. Abu Huraira, his entire role was memory. He didn't hold political office. He was a specialist in preservation. He held seminars.
So one guy's fighting wars, the other guy's in the mosque teaching.
Exactly. But there's a second layer to the Sunni defense, which is fascinating. It's about caution. The sources suggest Ali was terrified of misquoting the Prophet. He was so afraid of the telephone game.
I think I saw a note that he would actually make people swear an oath before he'd accept a story from them.
Yes, he demanded sworn testimony. So the Sunni argument is this: Ali prioritized quality over quantity. He was silent, not because he didn't know anything, but because he was just incredibly careful.
Okay, that makes sense. Logically, it holds water.
Yeah.
But then you flip the lens, you talk to a Shia historian, they look at that number 536, and they don't see caution.
They see a crime. They see evidence of a systematic purge.
Because of the politics.
You have to remember the politics. After Ali died, the Umayyad dynasty took power. These were his mortal enemies. For decades, it was official state policy to curse Ali from the pulpits during Friday prayers.
Which is just wild to think about.
It was a brutal, polarized time. And this created what historians call a chilling effect. If you were a scholar in, say, 700 AD and you started publicly quoting Ali,
You were putting a target on your back.
a huge one, you could lose your government stipend, get flogged, or worse. So from the Shia perspective, thousands of narrations were either suppressed, lost, or just censored because it was physically dangerous to repeat them.
But they don't believe the knowledge was lost, do they? They think it just went somewhere else.
Exactly, it went underground. This is the concept of the privatized chain. Sunnis rely on public chains of transmission. The Shia argue that Ali's true teachings, the gate of knowledge, were passed privately, father to son, through the line of the 12 Imams.
So the data isn't missing, it's just not in the Sunni books, it's in a different library.
Right. It's in the Shia collections, attributed to the later Imams, claiming to carry Ali's wisdom forward.
Okay, now here is where the academic lens comes in and just complicates everything. Because critical historians, they look at this 500 versus 5,000 split and say, you're all missing the timeline.
The timeline is the killer. We have to remember, Ali died in 661. The big books, Bukhari, Muslim, they were compiled in the 9th century.
So that's a gap of, what, 150 to 200 years?
It's a massive gap for oral history. 5 or 6 generations of he said, she said.
Wow.
So the academic argument is that the numbers we see today don't reflect who spoke the most in the 7th century. They reflect the editorial choices of the 9th. By then, Abu Huraira was a safe source, politically neutral, mostly legal rulings.
And Ali was radioactive.
He was a political lightning rod. If you included too much from Ali, you looked partisan. You looked like you were picking a side. So the editors, consciously or not, they just filtered the database.
That leads us perfectly to the next piece of this puzzle, geography. Because you can't talk about Ali without talking about Kufa.
Kufa, Iraq. Yes, Ali's capital. He moves the center of the Muslim world from Medina, the Prophet's city, to Kufa, a garrison town in Iraq. And that one decision, it just changes the DNA of Islamic history.
And the notes mention Kufan chains of narration. It sounds technical, but it seems to be the root of all this.
It is. In Hadith studies, location is everything. Ali's base of support, his students, his army, they were all in Kufa. So naturally, that's where his stories were circulating.
But the Sunni critics, they didn't trust anything coming out of Kufa, did they?
Didn't trust is putting it mildly. To the early Sunni critics in Medina or Baghdad, Kufa was the Wild West.
A hotbed of rebellion.
Exactly. Sectarianism, weird theology, Shia agitators. So if a narration came with a Kufan chain, meaning the people passing it down were from Kufa, the critics would immediately squint at it.
It's like a modern news story coming from a source known for extreme bias. You just flag it.
They'd flag it as Shia-leaning or partisan. So imagine you're a student of Ali in Kufa. You heard him speak. You tell your son. But when the Sunni collector comes around 150 years later, he looks at your zip code and says, Kufa, probably made up. And he tosses it.
So the truth was literally segregated by geography. Medina was credible, Kufa was suspect.
And that's the academic insight. These chains aren't neutral pipelines of information. They're sectarian memory traces. The Sunnis preserved Medina's memory. The Shia preserved Kufa's memory, and they almost never cross-pollinated.
It really is the Umayyad influence again, isn't it?
You cannot overstate it. The Umayyads didn't just fight Ali on the battlefield, they fought him in the history books. They actively sponsored fabrications against him.
So you have one group shouting his praises in Kufa, another inventing lies in Syria.
And then historians, centuries later, trying to sift through the rubble.
It's like trying to reconstruct a conversation where half the people were screaming and the other half were gagged.
That's a brilliant analogy. And nowhere is that screaming match louder than what we call the war of words. We have to talk about Qadir-kum.
Qadir-kum. Okay, this is the pivotal moment. The Prophet stops a caravan, thousands of people, lifts Ali's hand, and says the famous phrase, "Whoever I am his Molo, Ali is his Mola."
A single sentence that split the Muslim world in two.
And it all hangs on one word, Mola.
It does, and the problem is Mola is what linguists call a polysemous word. It's a shapeshifter. It has over 20 different meanings in Arabic.
20? That seems intentionally confusing.
Chuckle slightly. Well, language is messy. Mola can mean master or lord, but it can also mean friend, ally, neighbor, or even freed slave.
That's incredibly unhelpful for a succession announcement. So how do the different sides deal with this?
Well, the Sunni interpretation looks at the immediate context. The sources say soldiers had been complaining about Ali. He was very strict about the spoils of war in Yemen.
Right.
So some soldiers were grumpy and complained to the Prophet.
So the Sunni view is, this wasn't about succession. It was the Prophet just saying, hey, stop complaining on my cousin. He's my friend. If you love me, be his friend.
Exactly. A defense of character, not a political coronation. In that reading, Maula means ally or beloved.
But the Shia, look at the staging, stopping everyone in the burning sun, building a pulpit out of saddles, and they say, you don't do all of that just to say be nice to Ali.
Right. For them, the context implies gravity. They interpret Mala as master, absolute authority. Whoever I am master of, Ali is master of. They see it as a clear, divine designation.
And what does the academic lens say about a word that can mean two opposite things?
They'd say that ambiguity is the whole point. Critical scholars suggest that later generations just projected their needs onto this word. By the 9th century, Sunnis needed it to mean friend to validate the first 3 caliphs.
And the Shia needed it to mean master.
To validate Ali's claim, it's retroactive clarity. You pick the definition that fits your team's version of history.
Right.
And we see this even more clearly with legal issues. Take muta, temporary marriage.
This was a really confusing part of the research. We have Ali quoted saying 2 completely contradictory things.
It is the perfect example of the battle for memory. In Sunni collections, you find Ali explicitly saying, "The Prophet forbade muta, case closed, banned."
But in the Shia collections,
Ali is quoted saying, "If Umar hadn't banned muta, no one would have committed fornication." The implication being the Prophet allowed it, and it was the second caliph who stopped it.
he can't have held both positions.
No. And the academic view is that we're probably not hearing the real Ali in either case. We're seeing later legal schools using Ali as a ventriloquist's dummy.
That's a cynical take.
It's a critical take. The Sunnis needed a companion precedent to ban the practice, so they put the ban in Ali's mouth. The Shia needed to distinguish their law from the Sunnis, so they put the permission in his mouth. The real Ali is just buried under layers of 9th century lawyers fighting each other.
This brings us to the next contradiction, which is, I think it's the most jarring one, the paradox of character. Depending on which page you read, Ali is either a terrifying enforcer or a pacifist mystic.
This shift fascinates me the most. It really highlights how memory evolves.
So on one hand, you have the Lion of God, the warrior. There are narrations of him burning apostates, which is a huge controversy,
Yeah.
and enforcing hudud punishments like cutting off hands. It's gritty, violent 7th century stuff.
Yes, it fits the context of a chaotic civil war. But then you flip to the Sufi traditions, or even parts of the Naj al-Balagha, the peak of eloquence, and you meet a completely different man.
You meet a sage.
A philosopher, someone who writes, people are of 2 types, either your brother in faith or your equal in humanity. A man who weeps at poverty, who hates war.
It feels like 2 different people. How do the faithful reconcile that?
Well, the Sunni view is usually compartmentalization. He was a ruler following the Sharia, and the law requires harsh penalties. But he was personally pious.
So a distinction between his public duty and his private nature.
Right. And the Shia view, they often reject the harsher reports entirely. They'll say those narrations, especially the ones about women after the Battle of the Camel against Aisha, they'll say those are Umayyad fabrications.
Invented to make him look cruel.
Exactly. They lean into the perfect man archetype. Wise, just, merciful.
But the critical lens, they see evolution.
They see the needs of the audience changing. The warrior Ali fits the needs of an early community fighting for survival. They needed a hero with a sword, the mystic Ali. That looks a lot like the values of the 8th and 9th centuries when Sufism was on the rise.
Ah, so when people wanted spirituality, not politics, they emphasized the mystical traits of their hero.
Or perhaps invented them. People wanted a spiritual escape, not a general. So Ali became the patron saint of Sufism.
And we can't ignore the difficult stuff. You mentioned the comments about women.
Right. There are sermons attributed to Ali that are very critical of female leadership, reflecting the war against the Prophet's wife, Aisha. Apologists try to soften them, but historians say, look, this reflects the patriarchal norms of the 7th century. We can't sanitize the past. It shows us Ali as a man of his time.
Which brings us to the final layer, the supernatural. Did Ali know the future?
If you ask the Shia tradition, the answer is an emphatic yes. This is the concept of ilm. They believe Ali possessed the Ja'far secret scrolls inherited from the Prophet with knowledge of the future, the end times.
And the Sunnis.
Hard pass. For Sunni, the Prophet's message was public, for everyone. This idea of a secret back door of knowledge given only to Ali, they classify that as gulu exaggeration, extremism. For them, only God knows the unseen.
But the academics point out something called retrojection.
It's a fancy word for writing history backwards. We find prophecies attributed to Ali where he predicts the rise of the Abbasid dynasty in very specific detail.
Which is convenient, considering the Abbasids took power a century after he died.
Exactly. It's like me predicting the winner of the 1998 Super Bowl today. Academics argue these were written after the events to give the Abbasids legitimacy. See? Ali predicted our victory. We must be the good guys. It's political propaganda dressed up as a miracle.
And some of these apocalyptic details look familiar.
Syncretism. As Islam expanded, it absorbed people from Persian and Jewish backgrounds. Some of the end-time scenarios attributed to Ali look remarkably like pre-Islamic Persian myths. It suggests converts just brought their old stories with them and attached them to their new hero.
So where does this leave us? We started this deep dive looking for Ali ibn Abi Talib, but it feels like we found 3 of him.
We did, and that's the reality of historical memory. We have the Sunni Ali, the rightly guided caliph, a great man but fallible, one of a team. We have the Shia Ali, the infallible imam, the divinely appointed successor, possessor of secret knowledge.
And then we have the historical Ali.
The man who is obscured by 150 years of oral tradition, civil war, and censorship. The man who is almost impossible to see clearly because so many people have stood in front of him, painting his portrait to look just like them.
It really makes you wonder about the stability of oral history itself. I mean, if a figure as central as Ali the Prophet's own family can be remembered in such radically different ways, with thousands of different words put into his mouth.
It raises the ultimate question, doesn't it? When we read these texts, are we hearing the voice of a man from the 7th century? Or are we just hearing the desires, the fears, and the political arguments of the 9th century projected backward onto a blank canvas? Are we reading history, or are we just staring into a mirror?
That is a thought that is going to keep me up tonight. Thanks for taking the deep dive with us.
Oh, pleasure.